Hey everybody, welcome back to Unplayable, your favorite show about our favorite games. I'm D-House here with Mike, Jay, and Jim, the regular crew here. Guys, we're a week away from GenCon. How are y'all feeling?
So excited.
Oh,
So
I
sad.
can't
So
wait. Like, oh yeah, Jim, you don't get to go. You suck. But I'm really excited.
I'm so happy for you guys, though. Just can't contain my excitement.
So good. You're a 3-hour drive away, but you're still not coming, so whatever.
Yeah,
Imagine.
at least come and hang out with us like one night. It's only 3 hours.
Have some
Honestly,
dinner.
if it's B-dubs, I'm in.
Where else would it be?
So we've got a whole plan here. It's very Lorcana focused. Obviously, we've got the release of Disney Lorcana at Gen Con. We've got starter deck tournaments. There are other things happening with our favorite games. We've got hopefully. We've got lots of good Keyforge happening, Star Wars Unlimited demos happening. We've got lots of stuff that's coming, but Lorcana is the topic of the night.
Right,
yeah. So are y'all ready to play with physical cards, not TTS pixel board cards?
I'm very pumped, except apparently nobody's going to be able to play with physical cards. So
what do you mean?
Have we even said the word allocation on this podcast?
No, we haven't. But
Okay.
that's okay. That's okay. I don't think
it's not relevant for us to talk
about. It's not relevant
now.
for us. Like, I think it will end up potentially being a problem, but we can talk about it when it becomes a problem. And I will say one thing, and then we can move on from this topic forever until it's just inevitable that it is a topic among the community. But don't overpay for product. Like, there's no reason to. There's no first edition. There's no advantage to having cards now. Just be patient. I know it's hard, but you will buy product for a reasonable price at some point in the future. Don't pay double for something that is not going to be worth that much in like 3 months.
Wait, but the one exception is if you're buying my Mickey Mouse Brave Little Tailor that I open at Gen Con, because I have to pay for my Gen Con trip. So in that case, it's okay to pay exorbitant prices.
You can overpay for that, but everything else.
D-House will sign it to make its value.
There it is.
Oh, that's a great idea.
There it is.
You're going to make it worth less.
All right. Make it truly unplayable.
Instantly devalued.
So we'll talk about other games maybe next week's episode. I don't know. We haven't actually planned because that's not how we do things. We're talking about Lorcana tonight, and we're going to be opening packs. We're going to be doing starter deck throwdowns. We're going to be grinding it out for the top 8 Sunday tournament to be the Lorcana champion of the world forever. It's going to be great. So, Mike, you had some thoughts about just giving some top tips. Your 5 non-negotiable strategies to winning everything Lorcana.
5 top tips.
Yes.
So for the Office fans, this is going to be a reference for you. You know how they do the skit, him and Michael and Holly do the skit at the park day or whatever, and then David Wallace has to like mention before, I have not seen this before they do it. So insert that here.
That's a great reference.
I love that.
Yeah. So Mike, take it away.
All right. So
Michael Scott, take it away.
Free. Prison Mike here.
Oh my word.
So you guys can feel free to disagree with these tips, but we'll go through them one by one, see what you guys think about my list here.
Sure.
And we'll do it that way. See if it's fun. So the first tip that I have after playing at least 10 games of Disney Lorcana is
what?
I don't remember how many I played. Mine.
Give us your best guess.
I don't know, at least 100 probably now.
There it is.
Okay, I think that's fine.
A lot.
I mean, we can go count our videos. That's at least
count our videos, and then
that's probably
double
30.
it. Yeah. So maybe not quite 100 in real life. You guys have played more than me because I don't play on Pixelborn.
Right.
But
Yeah.
all right, first real tip is mind your uninkable cards. I am the best person to be giving this advice because I am the person who needs this advice the most. I am constantly building decks that have way too many uninkable cards because I get stars in my eyes about how cool these combos can be and how amazing this deck is going to be when I draw the correct cards in the correct order, and then I don't draw the correct cards in the correct order and I get screwed. So don't be me. Don't get screwed. Don't play too many uninkable cards. What do you guys think about that tip?
100%.
Mind your stank.
Mind your stank. No, for sure. I think, and I agree with you. Like, it's the best. Some of the best cards in the game are all the uninkable cards. So it's like you want to play them, but you have to make a decision. So in a standard deck, what would you say is the like average like I guess amount of unequal cards you can have, like a scale, like
I think
5 to 10, 10 to
I
15?
think 8 to 12 is like a reasonable number for a normal deck. I think
Okay.
you can justify more in very specific situations, and
Purple.
less is also fine because you don't run into any issues if you don't have any, but you're not playing the most powerful cards if you're not playing them. So I think I would try and stick within that range if you're just getting started, and try and break the rules and fall on your face and see if it works, and then eventually maybe it will. Or at least I'm going to keep telling myself that.
I think I find myself putting 12 in my decks, like almost consistently. I have put 16 in, and sometimes it's fine. Like most of the time it's probably fine, but it does get a lot more dicey with 16.
Yeah, in theory, 16 should be fine because every almost 4 cards is one uninkable card, but that's not the way reality works. And so you don't draw your cards perfectly in that order, and it becomes much easier to get sort of ink screwed, and it feels real bad.
I think
Go ahead.
Okay, I would say the piece that I've been working through is like the cards that are uninkable and like higher cost value. You need less in your deck that do that. But if your uninkable cards are ones you're okay playing early turn, those are a little bit like more okay to maybe add a few extra in there. And I just feel like with a game like this, like I don't think you can necessarily like win a game based off your deck building here, but like you for sure could lose your game just off of putting too many uninkable cards in there, and you're just really hurting your ability to be consistent.
Do you consider Fire the Cannons to be an uninkable card? It's a weird question because like it literally is, but like does that count towards your like allocated limit?
Because those are no, I actually wouldn't count
because you probably always play them. Like you probably don't even ever want to ink them anyway. But then you get into a weird sort of area where sometimes you do need to ink that card, right? Like the thing you're trying to avoid is too many uninkable cards in your hand at once. And I think you can justify that as sort of you can play this card early, so it counts less. So you probably are more likely to be able to play those cards, not having wanted to ink them anyway. But you can still get yourself into a bad situation by including too many of those, even despite that. I don't know.
And that's where, with the Fire the Cannons in particular, that's where I could see going to 16 as being reasonable. But I do think 12 is probably the sweet spot. And I know, like, in the game Magic, they have the, like, ratios perfectly figured out of, like, oh, you want this many lands in particular in every single deck. And so I'm sure
somebody will get there one day.
Yeah. Until then, go with that. It feels like the sweet spot for those of us who've played 10 plus games.
Ask ChatGPT how many uninkable cards you should play. You'll probably get a reasonable answer.
Now, of course, like a lot of the people playing at GenCon are just getting starter decks with booster packs.
Sure.
So that this won't fully be like something you have to think about, unless because every starter deck comes with a booster pack, right?
Yeah, I wonder. I actually don't know how they're gonna like rule it, because like only certain number of those cards are gonna be relevant to your deck if they force you to play those colors, right? So
Right.
yeah, we'll see how that ends up actually working.
Yeah.
Another question too is like, how do you? Because other people will probably have bought product at the booth beforehand. Like, how do you know that?
Yeah, how do you
they
know that that card
actually
came from the
opened
pack?
those packs? I think that's going to definitely be a thing.
That'll be a
people
factor.
do.
Yeah, because people suck. Somebody's got to ruin it for everybody. Are you guys ready to move on to my second top tip?
Yeah.
Let's go.
All right.
Yeah.
The definitive number 2 tip is deck build for card advantage. So
that sounds obvious. What do you mean by that, Mike?
It does sound obvious. The premise is that in this game, card advantage is very important. Not running out of stuff is very important, because you can run out of stuff really easily. So there are a bunch of different ways that you can build for card advantage. One is drawing cards. Another is ramping cards, because they essentially draw you a card by putting the top card of your deck into your inkwell. Another is, in a way, like bouncing cards to your opponent's hand or removing your opponent's characters. Basically anything that puts you ahead in the number of cards that you've played or get to use versus your opponent. So what do you guys think about that? This might be like the super obvious one, but I think it's still important to bring it up.
Yeah, you don't want to get in top deck mode. That's the worst way to play this game and inevitably lose, which sometimes it's inevitable. And if we're all playing starter decks at GenCon, I imagine there's going to be more than a few games that's going to end up in top deck mode, because you're typically inking a card, playing a card, and you're only drawing one. So
yeah, this tip is definitely not very relevant for the starter deck challenge, because you're not actually building that deck. So
right.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
But if you want to build the deck and then go beat Mike the Rebel Spy on the side, for bragging rights, I think that's totally
not
right.
much of a brag, but
what are
that's
the
all right.
different? And I know you mentioned a couple, but maybe what other ways are there to gain card advantage other than draw a card or ramping, like Detective Mickey Mouse or One Jump Ahead, giving you resources from the top of your deck? What other like, I can think of Hades, that recurs cards or characters from your discard pile back to your hand. What else in this game
I think,
so far?
In a way, I think rush cards can be card advantage in a lot of cases, because if you're playing them well, you're able to remove something on your opponent's side of the board and keep your character that you just played. So you're removing their card while playing your own card. I think cards like that in general are very good. Very expensive, obviously, but Maleficent is like one of my favorite cards for this, because you play it, you immediately get to destroy one of your opponent's things, and you have like a significant threat on the board that you can kind of leverage. So I think stuff like that. There's probably a bunch more that I'm not really like thinking of off the top of my head, but find those things and find those like interactions and ways to gain an advantage and play those.
Yeah, even things that like you'll hear us a lot of times say, like those little one cost cards, it's like it's not doing enough. It's kind of what we're saying to be worth a whole card. So it's like if you can use a card that like eliminates 2 of the cards that they played, that's card advantage. So whether that's making a favorable trade on the board, or the first one that came into mind was like the new Elsa card that got revealed. Like all it does is just exert 2 of their cards, but that could let you then choose like what you're fighting in with, and can make those trades that would give you a bigger board advantage. So that's like you're looking for those advantages with every card that you play. Can I kind of whittle them down of like what resources they have available to them?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is like at the end of a game, oftentimes the person who played more cards won the game. And that's true across a lot of different card games. So it's not sort of like unique to Disney Lorcana, but it feels amplified in Disney Lorcana because of, I don't know, maybe how like the draw mechanic works alongside the fact that you can directly attack your opponent's characters. But for some reason, it feels sort of heightened in this game. So I think it's extra important to call it out.
Yep.
Cool. Any other thoughts before we move on to number 3? All right. Well, number 3 did not used to be relevant at all, but now is incredibly relevant. And it is don't overextend. And what this means is, if you're not familiar with card games, is basically like don't play out all of your stuff just for it to get wiped by be prepared or grab your sword. Those are also great examples of card advantage cards. Yeah. If you can use one of your cards to get rid of multiple of your opponent's cards, you're feeling good. And the worst thing that you can do as the person on the receiving end of that is play out all the stuff, end up with no hand. Your opponent plays that with just one card, kills everything that you have. And now they have a bunch of stuff that they can play, and you're sad because now you're top decking and you can't. So definitely more obvious for the longtime TCG folks, but there may be some people among our listeners who are not. So yeah,
over time, the more that you play, the more you'll be able to suss stuff out like that. And like just learning the card pool helps too. So if you know there's a Tinkerbell on board, then at any point they can put shift Tinkerbell in and then do the shenanigans. Or if they're at 7 mana, ink. If they're at 7 ink, then they have the potential of playing the board wipe, et cetera, et cetera. You kind of just like start looking at signs that this may be happening, and then choose how much you want to extend and not extend.
And it's difficult to do, like to not play the cool stuff that's in your hand, and you feel like you're getting ahead as you're playing cards and questing and doing all the stuff that you want to do, your deck wants to do, but holding back a little bit if you are sensing that something is coming is very smart and ends up saving you. David, you had something to say?
I was just gonna say, I think a good rule of thumb is the whole idea of just because you can doesn't mean you should, like, is a good rule of thumb. Like if you just because you can ink something doesn't mean you should ink something. Just because you can quest doesn't mean you should quest. Like if you've got Baby Hook in your deck, just because you can quest with Hook doesn't mean you should. If you're looking at a vanilla 1/2/2 on the other side, like a Flounder, because it's not going to lead to an equal trade. So sometimes the hardest thing for like good gamers to become great gamers is to just not do something that like in your head you're like, I should do this, I should play, I should quest, I should, it's just to pull back and be like, you know what, I'm gonna hold back, I'm gonna intentionally hit the brake here and not do the thing that I think most people would, because there's something else at play here. And that's where I see a lot of Lorcana players like just all gas, go, and then they end up like eventually hitting a wall because they
the
just always
old
do the
Sir
thing.
Christopher style of play.
I will say, like, Diaz, I think that is like one of your biggest strengths in card games, though, is your ability to kind of recognize like what are the things that could really punish me here. And so that it comes with a lot of understanding of like the card pool, like you guys said, the situation that you're in as well, as far as you have to know, like, are you on the offensive right there, or you kind of need to like soak up some punches for a little bit? Because if you're on the back foot, sometimes you can't play into out. Sometimes you do have to go like all gas, no brakes, to try to like overcome what you're doing. So having that understanding of like, where are you at in the game?
Yeah.
And then, okay, if I'm already going to win by not playing this, unless they have this one answer, then maybe play into that answer. Like just to make sure that you're not going to just throw away the game for fun. But that's a really tough,
very
piece
nuanced
of like card
sort of thing
to like try to figure out.
It comes from like playing a ton of games, seeing sort of common play patterns, knowing the card pool, and sort of just thinking ahead a little bit, which I'm really bad at. But are we ready to move on to the next one?
Gosh, let's do it. 3.
All right. Yep. So number 4 is lore matters. So I did not used to think that this was true. Early on when we were playing, Jay and I were, I think Jay built this like seemingly crazy steel Amethyst deck that just basically controlled the entire board through challenger units and smash, fire the cannons, that kind of stuff. And it felt like you got to a point where you just had so much card advantage from your card draw and your removal that it didn't matter how much lore was on your characters. Eventually, through attrition, you would just win the game. And I don't think that's true at all anymore, because there are so many different ways to play the game now. And having 2 or 3 lore on a character is super relevant and allows you to win the game a lot faster than what was previously possible in the very limited card pool that we had access to. So cards like Hans, which is a 4-cost 3/3 with 3 lore, is actually really interesting because it is a 4-cost that has 3 lore on it. It has bad stats otherwise, but the 3 lore is like so relevant that I'm like pretty excited to play that card and get that to the table. I think you have to now have a really good reason to play a card that only has 1 lore on it. It has to be doing something else that is like significant. Otherwise, it's not even worth considering. I think that's how important it is to have like 2 or 3 lore characters in your deck.
I don't hate that take.
Yeah. What do you guys think about that one?
Well, what about like 1-cost, flounders?
I don't play those in my deck anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
I don't think they provide you enough value. And I think that a lot of I would rather, if my goal is to play cheap stuff, I'd rather play Lilo and Maleficent, which have 2 lore on them. Like they don't survive for as long in theory.
But the sacrifice you're making is health, right?
Yes,
like
your 2/2s are like not really, doing a whole lot anyway.
It's
right?
interesting. So this is kind of like an aside to what we're actually talking about.
Yeah.
But I've been putting 1-cost 2/2s in my deck.
Interesting.
Instead of Captain Hook's, Maleficent's, or Lilo's.
Uh-huh.
Because I feel like I'm playing against decks that play 2/2s and being able to, I don't know, it just feels weird to play a 1-cost that their 1-cost trades into and then stays on the board.
I don't think 1-cost 2/2 is like the worst stat line on it. Like in reality, like you're getting like if there was a 2-cost 4/4, you'd play that probably. So you're getting like double the stats for its cost. So I think it's well costed, right? Like a 1-cost that's a 2/2. I think that's like a reasonable amount of resources to pay for those stats. But I lately have not been playing this in my deck. Number one, because Tinkerbell exists and they just die when she comes down. So I just think that there's like better ways
actually,
to spend
2/2s don't technically die as soon as she
not
comes
immediately,
down.
but
whereas the 1/1s
card,
do.
The 1/1s do die. That's true. But the swords card kills
the
those.
swords card does.
Yeah. Which also, if you're playing steel, you're playing that card probably. So I don't know. At least that's how I've been playing recently. Maybe that's not right, but I don't know. I haven't been feeling like I've been getting a lot of value out of my like 1-cost 2/2 cards. I'd rather
You've been playing a lot of blue
stuff.
anyway, though, and like you just don't play 1-cost in blue.
Yeah, there's no point. Yeah, except develop your brain. I like that card.
Well, units.
Yeah,
you don't play 1-cost characters.
Yeah. Except Flounder, because it's the best card in the game.
Flounder OP.
I definitely do think though we were wrong. But I mean, we had a very limited card pool, so it was like completely different back then.
Yeah.
But lore lore wins games.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this last night as I was falling asleep and couldn't go to sleep, which is just that like evaluating cards in this game is so interesting and different because the combat stats of the character is completely separate from the win condition stats of the character. And there's so much like it's such a simple thing, but there's so much like design space in there and so much like decision space in sort of like building a deck and sort of just like thinking about the game in general. It's not something that I have like really experienced that much in other card games, especially card games as simple as this. But it's just like a multiplier on top of like the rest of what the card does. Is how much lore does it quest for, and it's more relevant than I thought was the case.
Right, like the Red Gaston has been like an interesting like case study in this of like It's a 2/4/2 with no lore, and it basically is permanently reckless.
I like that card a lot,
and-
actually.
Yeah, I've been coming around on it too. I feel like a lot of people were pooping on it, but I'm like, in a lot of ways, I'm like, man, to trade a two cost with 4 power and stuff, not all the time, because you do have the flounders and stuff. It's like, okay, this feels bad. I paid 1 more lore than you did, and I've but it at least says like, okay, are you really gonna quest with that other thing?
You can take out
knowing
Cusco,
I can't
so
attack
that's why I
thing.
like it now.
There it is. Yeah. But I like design stuff like that makes you think like, oh wait, is this good?
Mhm.
That's good.
I think that you like it, Mike, because you're playing red blue and you could throw this down turn 2 and then next turn sing. 1 jump and play 3 cost Mickey.
Yeah,
that's why you like it.
That is true. That is true. That is true. I like it a lot in red blue because it's like an early game. It's almost like an early game removal card, right? It's just like deal 4 damage to something basically.
Yeah.
And if you're not dealing 4 damage with it, your opponent is spending a card to deal with it on their side. So I really like it in that deck.
Yep.
I didn't think about reckless characters singing instead.
It's pretty good.
Another reason that I like playing the 1 cost 2/2s over the 1 damage 1 cost because of characters like Gaston.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have any other thoughts on this?
Lore matters, dog.
Lore matters. All right. The fifth and final tip on my list of top tips is play songs because they're insane. That's basically the tip. Like, you can play something that costs up to 7 and not have to spend any ink on it. So great example here is Be Prepared. It lets you wipe your opponent's board, and I mean your board too. But if you have, let's say, Aladdin, who costs 7, and you shift into Aladdin on turn 5, you can sing, Be Prepared with Aladdin, get rid of everything on the board. Maybe your opponent overextended into you because they didn't listen to these tips, and you get to then spend all of your ink on getting back onto the board before your opponent can do the same. So in other card games, that wasn't, that's not often possible, where you can destroy everything and then build up a board on the same turn.
Yeah.
And in the games where that is the case, it's been crazy powerful. So you can do that here with that. You can do that with the swords. You can do that with, I don't know if there's any other specific song cards yet that you can do that type of thing with, but there's just a lot of ways that songs are crazy. Like,
so I'm 100% with you. And as a good case study on Pixelborn, I know when my opponents are naturally better at the game, when I'm playing purple, I play Maleficent, the 3 cost Maleficent, where when I play her, I draw a card. She's a 2/2 with 1 lore pip. So at 3 cost with like 2/2 with 1 lore, most people are looking at that like, big deal, whatever, cannons. Right. Like, well, but it's more like, okay, I don't need to worry about this. They're either questing for 1 or fighting for 2 at 3 cost. It seems just looking at her, you've already gotten your advantage and it's over. But when you understand that Friends on the Other Side is a card that costs 3, that you can use this Maleficent that seems done with her usefulness, that you can exert this to draw 2 cards, all of a sudden that Maleficent actually becomes a little bit more advantageous. So when I'm playing purple, when I'm having an opening hand and I see Maleficent and Friends on the Other Side, I'm looking at my like turn 3 and 4, knowing exactly what I'm doing. But if you go out of your way to fire the cannons and do something to kill that Maleficent, all of a sudden you've disrupted my game plan. I can't exert to sing this song, and now I have to like really change, and it really disrupts the flow.
Yep.
And especially if you leave it Maleficent living for multiple turns, if I can do that a second time, if I can sing that same card a second time, I mean, I feel like it's like, okay, I've won this game because you haven't respected this threat.
Yep. 100%.
Yep. All right.
Whole New World is another card that you can do it with, basically. Like if you're out of cards or
Yeah.
pretty close out of cards, you can sing, draw back up, and then you have all your
Immediately play the cards that
ink
you
left
drew.
to immediately just like flood the board, which is cool.
So good. Yeah,
I
I'm even thinking of like the green card that lets you bounce a card. Really good to sing that. Play more stuff behind it.
I mean, anything. I actually think this is like a fundamentally broken aspect of the game.
Yeah,
I mean,
not wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not hating on the game because I've had a lot of fun with Lorcana, but I think that it is just like a busted mechanic. Being able to imagine in Magic, they were like, "Oh, you get to play this 7-mana card for free if you exert one of your characters." Like, that'd be really good, right? But beside the point, sing your songs because most of the time it's worth it.
They get. Yep.
And sing them out loud if you're playing Mike Rudin at GenCon.
Yeah, please.
He loves to be
just my favorite.
serenaded. Yep.
I feel like A Whole New World needs to be the duet since you guys are both getting to draw cards for it.
Oh, that's great.
Like,
Oh,
you need to
that's
have that
actually-
Aladdin Jasmine
I
back and
wonder-
forth.
Hilarious.
That's so. I never thought about that. That's genius.
I had not considered that. Jim Braden, well done.
Wow. I had not thought about that.
You're welcome.
It's funny because like there's so much baked into that card where it's like it's a whole new world because you're getting a whole new set of cards, 7 cards, and you're both doing it, so it's a duet. Like that's perfect.
That's so good. That makes me like that card so much more.
Yeah,
Wow.
I already liked
exactly.
it. That's awesome. Okay. Any
Jeez.
bonus tips you guys have that
Yeah.
I've left off? Yeah, let's hear it.
I jotted a couple down over here for you,
All right.
Coach.
All right. I'm
One
ready.
of them is, and I fall prey to this. I have in Pixelborn specifically fallen prey to this several times. Keep track of the lore on the board.
Mhm.
I have definitely not attacked into something because I didn't realize they had enough lore to win the game on their turn. But in addition to that, keep track of the lore you have on your board because these last couple turns is pretty significant in terms of like assessing how much lore you can get this turn and the following turn if they don't do anything. So if you have 7 on board and you can quest out and then you only need 4 next turn, then maybe it's worth just questing out with everything if they can't answer all your stuff. Like keeping track of that and doing the math to figure out yeah, just in general.
There's so much skill and like tactical sort of decision making around when to quest, especially at the end of the game like that. Like we've played so many games where I'm trying to like do the math of like, okay, if I quest with all my characters, like what are you most likely to do with what's on the board and like the cards that are potentially in your hand, and how, like, is this worth it? Should I do this other thing instead? And it just feels like there's such like a deep sort of like pool of possibilities and like decisions to think through there. And it's like very satisfying to do it. And I'm wrong most of the time, but when you're right about like the line to take, it's very satisfying and rewarding and lots of fun. I think like the last like 3 or 4 turns of Lorcana are some of the most fun sort of like card game experience I've had.
Yeah. I think I think my tip would be like understanding value trading better. Like I think that's not for people who have been steeped in gaming. I think it's a very like, if you played any Hearthstone, if you played like Keyforge, if you played any games where like you deal the same back and forth, like it's a pretty normal concept. But if this is new to you, that might be foreign. So if you're a new card game player, like understanding when it's better for you to trade. Like Mike and I were playing a game last night where I was like, gosh, I don't want to trade this. Like, I think it was like a Maleficent that could quest for 3. I don't remember the exact situation, but it's like I could put 3 damage into one of your characters, knowing my next turn that could open up my ability to actually kill this thing. to stop you from winning like 2 or 3 turns from now versus like me questing for 2 or 3 right now. And so like understanding some of those concepts have been like at sometimes like you have to like throw the blanket on their, you know, fire versus trying to start your own fire, and knowing when the value is there. And it's one of those things where like there's not a perfect formula for this. I wish there was, but that wouldn't make games fun either. So there is a level which like I think sometimes you have to lose a little bit to figure out when to adjust. But if you can just take a second and stop before you just hit that, you know, hit quest, grab that lore and just stop and be like, should I be doing something else? Should I either fight or should I just leave this standing up and not do something? Sometimes that's like what will bring you more success.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Jim, do you have one?
Yeah, actually play games to practice.
Yeah,
would be my advice, which sounds silly because I'm kind of roasting myself for probably playing the least amount of games here, but just the ability to like understand the card pool. How do you do that? Play more games. Start seeing like different combos that come up with, oh, I could use this reckless to sing a song. Like the more reps you get on a game, just in general, the stronger you'll get at it. And so I think literally playing the game, as silly as that
and
sounds,
trying different things, like in this, like any game that I've ever played, I've always had that moment where it's like you learn through a bad experience. So for this game, it was drawing a handful of unequal cards, and then you're like, I'm never gonna let that happen again.
Right.
Unless your name's Mike Gruden.
Yep.
so you learn from those mistakes, and like you can hear people say the words, "Oh, this is a bad card," or if you just say like, "Hey, what's that deck list? I want to see that deck list real quick." If you don't know why certain things just don't work the way you want them to, or maybe they do work way better than you could even imagine, a lot of the times you have to just see it for yourself to be able to be like, "Oh, now I understand why the rest of the community thinks this way or has that opinion."
Yeah. You're tapping into a great principle. I do think it's true that you learn more through your failures than your successes. Like I really think I wholeheartedly believe that.
He froze for a second. It's fine.
Are you back?
I'm great.
Okay. Related to this, and as the last tip before we get out of here,
I have one more, but that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, you go first.
10 definitive
Are you sure
tips.
you don't want to do it real quick? You're not gonna lose it?
No, I'll do it.
Want me to write it down?
No, I might remember. We'll see.
Okay. So mine is the mulligan. Learning how to mulligan well. So most decks probably aren't going to require certain cards in your opening hand, but some do. Like any blue deck, if I don't draw one jump ahead or Detective Mickey, then I mulligan hard for one of those two. But in most cases, and I've learned this through having played a lot, if I have a bunch of inkable cards in my hand, or I have a couple uninkable cards, but the inkable cards I have in hand I don't want, it's not always better to mulligan. Sometimes you just keep some of the cards you have because you can end up mulliganing into uninkable cards, which are some of the worst cards to have in your opening hand most of the time, unless it's like very specific cards. But most of the time you want to have a decent amount of inkable cards in your opening hand so that you have options to put down. So just because you don't want this card right now doesn't mean mulligan it, because you could end up hurting yourself and having like half a hand of uninkable cards. So, but there's a lot of nuance to mulliganing in this game, but that's just like one tip. That was it. That was my thing.
All right. Last one before we get out of here is find a way to have, this is related to all games, but find a way to have fun while you're losing. Because
I need to take this advice. Hold on, I'm in.
You're going to lose half your games on average if you're an average player. If you're a great player, maybe it's less often than that. If you're a meh player, maybe it's more often than that. But in any case, find a way to have fun the times when you're not winning, because you're not going to win all the time. And if you're at a 50% win rate, which is like what games try to put you at, and like a tournament or at like in a lobby or a ladder or something like that, and you have no fun when you're losing, and you only have fun when you're winning, you eventually just have no fun, because you have this much fun when you're winning, and you lose this much fun when you're losing. You have net zero fun. You've not had any fun, unless the times that you're winning, you're just like elated and over the moon, and the times you're losing, you're not that tilted, but you're probably tilted. It's gonna make it so much more enjoyable for you to participate in the hobby, and it's also, I think the more important thing, it's going to make you a better opponent to play against. And that's important for me because I hate playing against people who are bad at losing.
Yeah.
It's just an uncomfortable situation when I can tell that my opponent doesn't want to be sitting at that table. And like, I'm there to have a good time. Maybe I'm winning the game, maybe I'm losing the game. To a certain extent, I don't really care. I'm not so invested in the outcome of any game that it just ruins my day to have lost. Sometimes it's annoying. Sometimes you get just like nut drawed and you're just like can't do anything and you just lose. Just like be happy for your opponent that they did something so cool and that their deck popped off. Like, it's really hard to do sometimes for a lot of people, but it will make it so much more enjoyable for you to play these games. And it will add so much value to the overall community.
Yes.
If you are not a horrible monster when you lose.
Yep.
So I'll get off my soapbox if you guys want to say anything about that.
No, I don't have anything to say. I don't have any experience with that. I hate everything I do. I hate all the games I play.
You hate winning too.
Yeah, I hate it.
And I felt that.
Nah, I'm just kidding.
I mean, that's a great close, because we're going to GenCon, and so much of the beauty of GenCon next week is the people we get to hang out with after the game. It's not like the games are fun themselves. Yes, we're gonna have fun playing games, but it's like the sweet awesomeness like that happens is the before the games, in between the games, and after the games, when you're hanging out and talking. And so just keep that in mind. Like, these are just games. Like, a lot of us play games because our lives are very serious and we've got deadlines at work and we've got family responsibilities and like there's a lot of stress. And so just enjoy this space, have a good time. Remember, it's still a game, especially with Lorcana. Like, going into this, there is absolutely nothing at stake. Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah. Maybe you get some clout on the podcast cycle
for like 10 minutes before people forget.
Yeah.
Like, try to treat the game as a medium for social interaction, not as the end goal itself. So a lot of people might disagree with me, but that's just my theory. That's how I have enjoyed and had fun playing games, even when I'm losing. So I hope you take some of that.
That's why we do this podcast. I mean, that's I don't think that's crazy for you to say. I think that's what's created our bonds and our friendship in the gaming space, and that's why we record this every week. It's like, none of us are trying to, win Magic Pro Tour, Flesh and Blood, like World Championship. Like, it's just like, hey, you know what? Our lives feel richer because of the friendships and relationships. And like, let's play good games. Let's compete and let's, try to win.
Yeah. But also all in good fun, right? Like, that's at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's good.
All right.
On that note, final thoughts? I guess we got one more episode before GenCon, right?
Yeah, technically, yes.
Okay.
We do. Yeah. No, my only last thought is completely left my brain. So I don't have any thoughts left. Yeah, join
our Discord.
Do that.
We've had a ton of new people joining the Discord the last few days.
Yeah, it's been really cool.
So that's been fun. So join the conversation. Don't be afraid to speak up too.
Definitely.
Don't worry about if other people are talking. Just chime in.
Give Tom a follow on x.com.
Yeah.
X.com.
That's so dumb.
Too soon.
What are you doing, Elon?
That's good. Yep. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Unplayable. We'll see you in the next one, or see you at GenCon.
That's right. Bye.
See you later. Have a good one.